People, deluded, I'm back again. Good morning. I hope you're all doing well and safe, whoever you are, wherever you are. As usual, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you guys. I know I've started around 10 minutes earlier, but half the time I'm late, so it kind of doubles back. We're getting those minutes. And I've got a special guest with me, and I know he's got football soon, so, the quicker I can get him out of here, the better. You know the ones there when you work for the Athletic now, your prestige and them things. Now I'm playing. He's a good mate of mine. Introduce yourself, my guy. Not that they don't know who you are.
Hi guys, my name is Art De Roche. I've appeared with Deluded a couple times on the channel. We've known each other for about three years now.
Hot minute, bro.
Yeah.
Long time still.
So I hopefully you guys know me, but if you don't, I write for the Athletic and I support Arsenal as well, so that's me.
He's a great guy and he's extremely modest, but I'm gonna sell him for you. Not that the man needs any introduction. When you go on the Athletic, every morning I see something with him, and it makes me proud to read his stuff. Like I see you talking about PARTEY, the Arsenal stuff. I think one pet project of yours has always been to break things down like myself tactically. So when I'm seeing you doing that for the Athletic, it's a madness, bro. Like you're gonna go to higher and higher heights, man. I really appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your content, at Football London as well. So yeah, people, go hit up his socials, hit him up, man. This guy is the guy when it comes to Arsenal journalism, and soon to be the Oracle. And just hope he doesn't forget little old me on YouTube when he gets them exclusives and that. He lets me break it and that. I'm playing, man. How you been during lockdown, anyways?
Yeah, I've been good. I mean, like we were kind of saying off air, we can't really complain with the position we're in, both like in London, in a country that, although I guess you can question how it's run sometimes, isn't as bad as some countries across the world. And I think for me, I've just been like doing, I guess, what everyone else has been doing, playing PlayStation, writing pieces, and then catching up with friends, not in person, obviously, over group chats and whatever, but I guess that's been me. So how have you been doing as well?
My guy, you know what? It's funny enough, in COVID in general, like you said, I can't complain, man. Fortunately, I had two roles with YouTube and the job, and obviously, I left it and pursued this first time. So I'm privileged because I've had the option to do that at the worst possible time. I'm thankful because it could be worse. Many people don't have a fallback plan, as you know. There's people suffering out here. It's been a time where it's really tested me mentally as well, because I've had to change. Like as you know, you probably had a bag of plans. I had a bag of courses and all these things I wanted to go on, and COVID just messed it all up. So I've had to adapt. I think I've learned a lot about myself. Yeah, man, I've said one good thing is stuff like this, a byproduct has been consistent live. So I can't really complain. Everything's just on a hold, but you got to be adaptable, sort of thing. So yeah, man, I'm great, bro. I'm great. And like I said, we're pushing, so I can't really complain. Just off topic, I can I'm sure everybody has seen at this moment the rather tragic news that sadly Claude, famously known for being on AFTV, has sadly lost his life. He's died. Again, I don't want to speculate on any reasons for. All I'd like to say is, as someone that's come across him, he was very much a gentle and warm-hearted guy, like myself and everybody else, passionate for Arsenal. And on behalf of everybody listening, RIP Claude, and condolences to his family and the rest of it, because it's upsetting. People are dying. It's a terrible time anyways. So to know someone's lost their life early, it's upsetting, man. So RIP, man. Please, make condolences. Keep him in your prayers and things. That shit is effed up, really. Sorry for my language, but as someone who knew, I'm not gonna act like I'm Claude's or was Claude's best friend, but he's someone that I haven't got a bad thing to say. He represented the club. He was exactly how he was on and off the camera. He's a warm-hearted guy. It's sad, man. It's sad, and like I said, hopefully his family, condolences and things. So yeah, keep your RIPs coming, send your condolences and things. Good morning to those of you in the chat. I appreciate everyone. The members them are locked in. Talk to me about Arsenal, bro. Like, where you at as an Arsenal fan today on the 30th of March? We've been through a long season. Like, I have to ask you ain't been on there for a minute.
Yeah, probably better than I was last time I was on. I remember.
You look a bit younger, yeah.
Yeah, that was in the old 3-4-3 days, I remember.
Oh,
but now we're back to the 4 at the back, and I think it's not as perfect as anyone would like it to be. I don't think anyone can hide from that fact. Obviously, not in the Champions League or Europa League places. That's not that's going to be an issue. But I think the fact that Arsenal is still in the Europa League, still fighting to win that, hopefully, that I guess gives us a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, which does make me a bit optimistic going into the next run of games anyway, after the international break. Obviously, during the international break, there's been probably more focus from me on the women's side, as well as the England under 21s with how Eddie Nketiah is doing and Emile Smith-Rowe.
Bro, sorry to cut you off, but let's the under 21s, man. What you made of that quickly?
I mean, so first sentence of the recent piece I did on it was basically they deserve to be where they are, because like when watching both games, the first game in particular, the 3-4-3, Dwight McNeil playing left wing back, I don't
England 06 vibes, a bunch of strangers together. Like,
yeah, like I think just the ideas aren't there, or that there maybe was an idea there, but it was very much style over substance, I think, and that's never going to work.
Would you even say style though? Because when I look at it, I didn't see nothing from them, bro. Bunch of strangers, no wins in 7 in competitive now. Do you think Eddie Boothroyd has to go?
I think it's going to be tough for him to stake a claim for himself to stay after both this tournament and the last one, considering the talent that is there. I think when you look at that crop, and I don't think anyone looking at that crop would have decided to go with a 3 at the back with how much creativity there is there.
Facts.
You decide to put an extra defender on the pitch rather than, say, an extra attacking midfielder. I don't think that was
sense.
No. So obviously the Croatia game on Wednesday tomorrow is massive, but even if they do win and somehow get through with Portugal needing to beat the Swiss, it's going to be a tough ride, I think.
It's one of them ones where, again, I might be wrong, so I'm looking at you to correct me, but it's one of them when Portugal have to win by a certain scoreline, right? It's not just a normal winning sort of thing.
Yeah, so England have to win by 2 clear goals, and then I think it's just Portugal have to win. Because Switzerland have 3 points. I'm not sure on their goal difference, and Croatia also have 3 points. So England still have a chance, but it's very, very slim.
Very, very slim. And I know Eddie Nketiah has been speaking about how, you know, he doesn't agree with a lot of the language that's coming out in relation to us, in relation to England, sorry. Like you said, man, you know, you can't just stumble across getting into a tournament and just picking random players and random systems. There needs to be building blocks, and no criticism of AD Boothroyd directly, but it's all one thing from top to bottom, having all these exciting players breaking through and stuff, but you need a manager who echoes that excitement. With all due respect, I think AD Boothroyd he's been around the block too much. He knows what he knows. He doesn't seem like he's open to changing, so maybe they need to lean upon the younger sort of managers at England, or somebody of a similar age to AD Boothroyd who is more decent. I'm a bit disappointed. Well, I'm not disappointed because Eddie Nketiah has got some minutes, something he wasn't getting at Arsenal, but at the same time, I was kind of hoping that he could put himself into the shop window, whether that's to show Arteta like last year that you can be a starter. Obviously, we're coming to the summer where things are going to have to be done. So, and just simply to get some football, man. It's obviously it's real life now, but it's never nice to train and not play, and arguably not even be in the match day squads now. What do you think the future holds for Eddie anyways?
Yeah, it's hard to kind of assess now, because I think when Mikel Arteta has spoken about him before the international break, he said he was doing everything right in training.
Yeah, all of that sort of stuff.
And the only reason he wasn't being picked was because, of course, Aubameyang and Lacazette were playing quite well at the time. I think the thing that's different from last year is that now Aubameyang's playing through the middle. So you've got that extra competition. And when it's Aubameyang, that's that competition, you're probably going to suffer. And I think with this international break, it was crucial for, game time, but also rhythm, because I believe against Blackburn Rovers, the under-23s played, there wasn't much rhythm there when Eddie played, and Reece Nelson as well. But obviously Reece Nelson's been training throughout the international break with the first team. Eddie Nketiah has been with the 21s. And although I'd say England haven't really played to his strengths, a lot of the times you're seeing him have to pull wide to get the ball and then try
extremely isolated and begging for a bit of possession.
Exactly, and I think if you know anything about Eddie Nketiah, it's that he's best in between the sticks, and I think
box in the box.
Yeah, exactly, and not using him to his best capabilities, I think, is just not the best way to go about using him. And I think,
especially when he's captain.
Yeah, but I think the positive is that Arsenal are still in the Europa League, so that maybe will lead to some rotation in the Premier League. Maybe not straight away against Liverpool, because even though they're not have been great this season, they are still Liverpool. But maybe further down the line, that could lead to a few more minutes for, say, himself, Gabriel Martinelli, who's been kind of reintegrated before the international break.
That's a good point. I'm going to press you. I've actually got what I want to ask you here. Martinelli, I'm not missing that out. I completely forgot to press you on Martinelli. What's your thoughts on Eddie, though? Like, what do you think again, opinions are not facts. My opinion is, I think an element of me thinks he might surprise a few. He might turn into be a striker that no one expects him to. A part of me wants to keep him because of that reason. But at the same time, I see nothing wrong with players not necessarily developing at Arsenal. You know, if we could sell him, get a decent money, sell on fee, he could very much go on to play for England one day, but we've made money. And I just think at the time we are as a football club, I don't think he's quite cut the mustard. I think, you know, he's known for being a fox in the box. Of course, he hasn't had too many minutes, but it hasn't correlated to first team football, you know, and the opportunities you have had, you've been anything kind of but clinical. The Leeds thing, I don't want to harp on about that because, again, it was great mentality to not play at Leeds and then come and take Lacazette and Aubameyang out of the starting lineup. But there's no smoke without fire. There's got to be a reason why he wasn't there. Personally, I feel it's because of his overall play. There's got to be something, because we all know Bielsa demands pressing first and foremost when you hear Bamford speak. So whether it's hold up play, pressing, bringing other people in, I just don't think Eddie's going to quite cut the mustard here. But what's your opinions on Eddie?
Yeah, just on that Bielsa stuff first, because I think I remember at the time when Nketiah was at Leeds, one thing that Bielsa did say was that Bamford makes runs for the team, whereas Nketiah makes runs for himself. I think he's fixed that in a certain extent since coming back to Arsenal, where we've seen him maybe not just go full pelt straight into the box, but maybe hold his ground at certain times, and that's helped the team overall, where he probably looks to bring other players in a bit more. But I do still think that there is room for him to improve, as he is only 21 years old.
That's what people forget, man. It's 21, bro.
I think for me, from a personal point of view, this is not factual. This is just opinion.
Disclaimer from the sports writer.
I would probably look to extend this summer, and then
why? Let me play devil's advocate. Why?
Because I do feel that Arsenal do have a quality striker there, but he just needs to round his game a bit more. So I would extend and then loan him out next season, I believe, because we also have to remember Lacazette and Aubameyang both. Well, Lacazette's late 20s, turns 30 this year.
30 in May, I think.
In May, yeah, and Aubameyang's already past 30. So,
sounding like Arsene Wenger here, man.
I mean, you just got to look at the bigger picture, I think, because it's all well and good saying, okay, we can sell Nketiah and maybe try and get a new striker in, but we've seen with how difficult that can be in the current climate with how some hour stuff went in the summer. You're trying
to make me cry on my live stream, bro.
I've got a France shirt on at the minute, so I'm distraught. But
I know you're like me, where you grabbed him in Football Manager as well.
Yeah, definitely.
See?
But yeah, I think when people speak about transfers, they make it seem a bit easier than it is, and I think that like it's Football Manager, like you could just be the player the next day you have him. But in real talk, I think that Nketiah has the trust of Arteta, both in terms of what he can do on and off the ball, because we've seen with Arteta what it matters just as much how much work somebody does without the ball. I think definitely last season when he wasn't scoring, that was his off the ball work was the main reason he was still in the starting lineup. And I think with Eddie, like you said, we've got to remember how young he actually is, even though he's been in and around the first team for a while.
People write him off too much, man.
And I think last year he proved that he can compete toe to toe with Lacazette and Aubameyang. So
that's what I mean by he can improve. He can surprise people, because he surprised me. Go on.
Yeah, because if you think back as well, after lockdown, so 3 months of lockdown, you probably would have thought, okay, Lacazette's going to be Arteta's starting striker, but Eddie Nketiah is actually the person who started that first game after the restart at Manchester City. And okay, it may seem small because Arsenal ended up losing the game, but I think that is a big statement.
Vote of confidence, man. I swear that was a game. I might be wrong, but Holding was meant to start ahead of LUIZ. He got injured. If that was the away game, there's even XHAKA might have meant to be on the bench. Even Joe, I think, got a looking in that game, or I might be talking about a completely different one.
No, yeah, because Willock started because it was the first 4-3-3 game. So
and he earned his place them times as well. Yeah,
so I think with XHAKA, he got injured quite early on, so he came off, and then Guendouzi came on, and well, we know how that went.
We know what happened there.
But yeah, in terms of Nketiah, personal decision, I would look to keep him, and because I think that he can still offer something to Arsenal.
That's where I'm kind of on the fence, because I think as a club, we're at that stage now where we just have to make decisions and lie in it. And I just feel there's a lot of these players, whether it's Eddie, Guendouzi, you know me, I want to keep everybody. These players might go elsewhere and become blockbuster players. We might sit there and think, what if? But it just, at Arsenal, it doesn't feel that we make decisions and lie in them. Like, I know Eddie, getting 15 million for Eddie, for example, in a couple of years, that might look stupid. But if that 15 million could be added towards whatever kitty we have for our or anything else that Arsenal want to do, then I'm all for that. With Eddie, I'm on the fence with both of them, because fundamentally, I believe he needs consistent game time to make significant improvements. Same for the other HALE boys that have gone out on loan. You know, he was kind of getting that, as you alluded to, when he came away. He came away from that setup at Leeds. I don't think he's going to get it here. I don't think Arteta is 100% convinced in Aubameyang or Lacazette's capabilities consistently through the middle. So I think it's a bit long for Eddie. I would like to see Project Martinelli get going on as a striker. So I am of the belief, if you're going to sell him and bring in another striker, because I think that's what Arteta wants to do anyways, then fair play. But I'm with you as well, in the sense of, you know, you get it right now. It looks like to sell him and Nelson, but you give them a bit of confidence, go and let them get consistent football. They might look like better players. You know, we might even sit here and say, yeah, let's still sell Eddie, but he might have a year in the Prem or wherever, and he scored 15, 20 goals. That's a bit more change for us to sell, so to get money for. And I don't think we're getting the best out of our academy prospects, in that you want everyone to make it in the first team. Of course, you know, we're Mr. HALE here. I want everyone to make it. But if they can't, can we get top dollar for them people? So it is what it is. What do you make of Martinelli? Because again, you know, Martinelli, I remember he came back from injury in the Carling Yarabel Cup, better yet, against City. And, you know, for me, his energy is what I love the most. You know, he's clearly got ability, but he's of that sort of Saka and that Tierney ilk for me, and that he gets it, he's serious. And I'm a bit disappointed that he hasn't got too many minutes. At the same time, though, I do think fans are making a meal of it. He's had a bit of injuries. I do think with the wide areas, everyone's kind of been doing their job. There's a bit of competition there. So where are you at with Martinelli and his lack of football and everything else, man?
Yeah, so I think first thing that's most important is his attitude hasn't changed at all since the first injury. Like, when you think back to the winter just before the Carabao Cup games, his first game back for the under-21s was against Wimbledon. He played 45 minutes and he looked like he hadn't been injured at all.
Yeah.
Like, the pressing was still there. I
think he even pulled his muscle because of the pressing, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, so like everything was still there. Even just the quickness of thought on the ball was still there. And I think he showed that when he came into the first team against Manchester City, Chelsea and Brighton. But then when he rolled his ankle against Newcastle in the FA Cup in January. And I remember, because I was actually at that game, and it was like almost a sense of panic, like, what's happened here? But luckily, I don't think it was as bad as most people thought it was at the time. When I think, in terms of when noise started to be made by Arsenal fans about why he wasn't starting, it was probably around a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. So I did actually ask Mikel Arteta about it,
Nice. You see why I got him on this channel, people. You see, man said he asked Mikel Arteta. He said you got his number there. Like,
No, in a press conference after the Leicester game, because Arsenal
made
were
it. Like,
Arsenal were 3-1 up, and he brought on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang while Martinelli was sat on the bench, and it just seemed like, well, that seemed like a good opportunity to bring Martinelli on, but he didn't. And he basically said that he's looking for the right moments to use Martinelli in terms of having the right connections with certain players on the pitch, which I think is quite interesting in terms of a lot of people have been talking. I think you even mentioned it before, Project 9. With Martinelli, whether I know he's spoken last
he doesn't
season.
even like himself there, innit? He's on this left wing stuff, but he's Alexis, man. He's through that middle,
like. But the way I see him as very similar in terms of how Aubameyang moves in terms of when he's in that front line. He can do the central role, but he can also play off the left. I think having that option to interchange like Aubameyang does, say in the Leeds game where Aubameyang's got a hat-trick where he was playing through the middle but also came off the left. I think that's probably where long-term Martinelli can excel at his best for Arsenal, because you don't pin him down to one position, and then that's when defenders just kind of get a bit bamboozled with how quickly he's actually moving.
Facts. Don't you say, bro? Don't you think that he can be able, like, for me, anyways, Martinelli? Listen, if he's gonna be a left winger, cool. If he's gonna be a striker, cool. I see no reason as to why you can't excel over all them three positions, because that's what I saw with Alexis. I see, obviously, if you ask Alexis Sanchez, I'm pretty sure he'd say I like to play best left wing, but he could perform on all of these areas, and that's what I see for Martinelli. You've got the intelligence, you've got the speed of thought. He should be able to do them all.
Yeah, I think probably the weakest point is that right wing. I've seen him play there a few times
away,
West Ham, Burnley away as well last season, and it almost, again, quite similar to Aubameyang, he just wasn't really that effective off the right, because I think when you're playing those players there in particular, it's probably best to try and get them in behind. But when you're playing against teams like West Ham and Burnley, they're not going to give you that space in behind. They're just going to block the middle. And I think that's probably where maybe the selection hasn't been quite right in terms of the right moments to use them on the right. But in terms of Martinelli himself, I do think he probably does have the ability to just get all three positions down packed. But I probably see him more as either a central striker or a left winger. But in terms of the immediate right now, I'd probably say the Premier League looks like his best bet for minutes, with how important the Europa League is going to be, because we've seen throughout this season and last season how strong Mikel Arteta has gone in the Europa League, and I think that's probably a trend that's going to continue.
Has to continue, or we ain't getting no Europe, bro.
Definitely. Well, he even said that, like, even the Benfica game was like a cup final. So we've seen how he's going to approach these games, and I think, of course, that's the way it has to be now.
I'm not too sure, because that's one of my pet peeves, hearing the way people associated with Arsenal and how we actually perform without burning my bridges, because I've heard my manager come out and say we've learned our lessons from last year against Olympiacos based on how we played over 180 minutes against Olympiacos this year, and even the Benfica. I know you learnt your lessons, but your playing staff and the people you're managing, I'm not sure they did. For me, with Martinelli, I don't know where I sit personally, bro, because on one hand, obviously, you want your best players to play. You want a player that's probably on par, if not better than Saka in terms of potential and all of that sort of jazz to play. Like I said, for me, it's not even an age thing. He gets it. He's consistent. That's good enough for me. But at the same time, I think, again, I'm not Willian's biggest fan, but Willian's kind of turned, I don't want to say turned a corner, but turned a corner. Pepe's coming to the fore. Obviously, Aubameyang's floated about everywhere. It didn't work right wing, but he's there. Lacazette's there. Smith Rowe is there. He plays out wide. Odegaard's there. So whether you're a striker or a wing or whatever, it all correlates. So I like the options. I like not having to rely on these players. And I'm also worried the man's just got back fit as well. And I just feel fans do this sort of thing. And when these guys start playing, they start calling them overrated, because nobody says about when Martinelli conceded that penalty 2 years ago or whatever against Liverpool in the Cup. No one speaks about that poor game against West Ham, or like you said in the other one, Burnley. No one speaks about the Southampton one where he wasn't fit and we did mess around with the lineup. But sooner or later, even with Saka, I do think that the energy is changing, that to proclaim these guys as something, it flips, because everybody's saying Martinelli through the middle, don't sign another striker, do this and that. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong. But what happens if he has he's now starting, and through that 10-game period, he has a bit of a wobble? You know, we need to stop doing this thing as a fan base and as a club where no matter how good you are, we're reliant on you. Because right now, our performance is typically, whether Tierney, Saka, a couple of others, it all depends on if they're going to be up for it today, whether we're going to win or not. And as we've seen, we can't rely on one figure to move, man. What do you make of the obviously we've spoken before about Saka, we've spoken on Martinelli, you know, they're the two creme de la creme HALE boys. What do you make of the other lads on loan and whatnot? Because I think it's a tricky one, because on one hand, I think there's money to be made with these players, but there's also the homegrown element. So what do you make of Joe, Reece Nelson, and Joe, Reece Nelson, Maitland-Niles, and them and there? Because obviously Nelson's not gone out on loan. Maitland-Niles, him and Joe, personally, if I look at it, I'm a bigger fan of Maitland-Niles, but I see why Joe has probably got more of the opportunities based on what I'm seeing at your temporary homes. And I just feel Joe's just had a better loan spell so far. Not that Maitland-Niles ain't been playing well. I just think Joe stood out that tiny bit more. So what's your feeling in relation to the homegrown lads?
Yes, I'll start with Joe Willock. And I think, like with you, I'm probably a bigger fan of Maitland-Niles because of what he can bring both offensively and defensively. I think he's probably a more well-rounded player in terms of what a midfielder can bring to Arsenal. And yes, I did say midfielder with Maitland-Niles. I see what you did there.
See what you did there.
But with Willock, I do think his loan was probably a bit was fought out a bit better, because when you look at the team he's gone to, Newcastle.
Ooh, good point.
He's probably the midfielder that they needed. When you look at his profile, he's a box-to-box player. He's not a number 10, even though MIKEL Arteta tried him there last season.
Thank you, bro. More to being a 10 than just pressing. We need to see a bit of, controlling it in that.
Like, I think in terms of even Newcastle away last season, there was that moment where he loses the ball in midfield and tracks back John Joe Shelby, wins the ball, slide tackle, and then bombs up the pitch again. And it's things like that where you just see, even though he's not the most muscular player, he's very lean. He knows his body well, I think, when he's coming from that deeper position, and he uses he's deceptively strong, I think. And
deceptively strong and taller than people. I don't know if the TV correlates it, but Joe looks tiny on TV. He's more kind of scrawny than that.
Yeah, and I think in terms of what he needed and what Newcastle needed, it was almost a perfect marriage, because they didn't have a midfielder that could burst forward and get them up the pitch, whereas now they actually have that in the game against his debut against Southampton, arriving late into the box to score. I remember their game against Wolves where even though he didn't score and didn't get an assist, he was still driving forward. And again, in the HALE derby against West Brom, he was actually providing a few more passes in that game as well.
Even against Villa, second half, you're seeing cute little mix of tricks from him.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those players as well who thrives when he's confident. Obviously, that's just an probably an easy statement to make, but confidence does make a real change. And I think we've seen that at Arsenal with Nicola Pepe in these recent months. But with Willock, I just think that his loan was probably thought out a bit more. And I'm actually writing something on him this week.
Make sure you tune out for that, people. Make sure, because I know a lot of you are tuning in. Again, if you don't know, make sure you're looking at The Athletic. You've seen this man's name. Follow him on his socials. What was I going to say to you? You said something about Joe there, and it got me thinking. Do you think at Newcastle there's kind of more clarity over his role? Because I look at Arsenal and I think I won't quite say versatility, because he is versatile in the central midfield, but it's not like Maitland sort of thing. But it's almost like, one, like with Eddie Nketiah that he ain't got, you're playing consistently now. You've earned it, you're playing consistently. And like you said, the rhythm and whatnot. But also, it just seems like there's more clarity at Arsenal. Sometimes it was box to box, then you're a 10. I remember a couple games, you're even this inverted sort of winger. Even at times, he's a pressing striker. I think to have someone like that in your squad is great for a manager. There might be 5 odd games you want to deploy that tactic, but for a young man who's 20 odd and stuff, it's not going to help you and help your education. I think this is more likely to help his education. I feel Eddie and Joe arguably should have pushed more for a loan 18 months ago and things like that. Because like you said, I think you agree when I say Joe isn't, he's not setting the world alight, but you're seeing little bits and pieces in what he could do. And I think he's going to be the one to stay next season. I think we're going to keep him homegrown and whatnot. But it's an interesting one, because surely if you're Joe, I always say it, once you get a taste of consistent first team football, actually being able to train and play week in, week out, he might very well love Arsenal. He's been here since 4 years of age, but you don't want to go back, because again, surely the midfield is kind of not only cluttered, but the future is muddy. We don't know what's happening with Torreira. We don't know what happens with Maitland-Niles. We don't know what's happening with Guendouzi. We don't even know what's happening with XHAKA, ODEGAARD, Ceballos. But we do know right now you haven't been getting a look in. Now, you could use Smith Rowe as an example. He's been playing consistently. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in terms of the way the midfield looks currently, I know probably, okay, I'll just go with the midfield types Arsenal have.
Man, take it away, man. This is your platform. Say what you want to say, my guy.
So obviously there's Granit Xhaka. I'm sure we'll get onto him later, but
oh yeah, don't make me forget that. Well, let me write that one down as well.
But in terms of what Arteta wants, Arteta basically wants balance, and Xhaka gives him that with that left-footed player that can drop a bit deeper. So that's probably a role Willock's not going to take anytime soon. Then you look next to Xhaka and you've got Thomas Partey, probably the more box-to-box player that can thread the needle with a pass, but also give Arsenal a bit more defensive stability. And Joe Willock's probably not going to take that role as a starter anytime soon either. Then you look, what else do Arsenal have? Number 10, Smith Rowe and Odegaard. So that's quite difficult, I think, if he comes back and Mikel Arteta still wants to stay with the 4-2-3-1. But if the long-term plan is to go to a 4-3-3, like Mikel Arteta trialed last year against Man City and Brighton, like we mentioned earlier, I do think that Willock could have a better chance, because, as you said, he's probably got more clarity on his role at Newcastle with Steve Bruce, where although maybe Newcastle fans may not like Steve Bruce particularly, when you're looking at it from an Arsenal point of view, it's quite positive, because Willock has got he's simplified his game basically, and he knows what he's doing. And I don't think, like you mentioned, he had that Arsenal where Unai Emery was using him all over the place, where Mikel Arteta's used him as a 10, even though at the time it did work because there was more space for him to run into. He's not a 10 at heart. I don't think he's more of a box-to-box.
He's not an Arsenal 10. He can be the industry 10, but he's not an Arsenal 10. Let me say this to you on the flip side of it, because when I look at Joe and I look at the numbers, I can't remember it, but that Twitter account, Obino, he does a very good job. There was a game, I think it was even his debut or the game after, where, he got a lot of plaudits, but he only attempted like 16 forward passes or stuff like that. And when you look at the numbers, it's kind of why I can see you having a future, but not having a future. Because my problem has been, I think Joe's better in that box-to-box deeper role. But I guess it's kind of what you're saying, in that he's never going to be, not to praise Xhaka, but Xhaka in terms of how he sprays the ball and stuff. And it kind of still is muddy for me, because again, it's not that you aren't proving you can't do things, but it's like, I'm not learning anything new about you. I know you've got industry. I know you've got all gear. I need to see that you've got an idea, sort of thing. So yeah, what have you made of Maitland-Niles this once? Because many people would say his loan spell, fundamentally, he's getting game time and he's under an experienced manager. I personally feel playing, he's 9 times out of 10, he's playing against a low block. He's part of a low block now. That's going to help your education. But it does, some people may say, okay, cool, you've probably cost yourself an England spot. You've probably somehow, I don't know how, but some people say your value's dropped in terms of, going to West Brom. and you ain't really done much to convince Arsenal to say, yeah, you're getting a chance. Like even me, myself, my guy, I'm a big Maitland-Niles fan, but it's like, I'm watching it at West Brom, and of course it's different, but I'm sitting there and I'm going, all right, cool. Maybe that's why Arteta or so-and-so, because they're in training, that's maybe why you've not got that opportunity, because, you know, he's doing well, but still not seeing anything in terms of either goals or assists. I'm still not seeing much in terms of the final ball. I'm pretty sure someone that's watching them as well, that final ball from Maitland-Niles is week in, week out. It could have been a goal or an assist or something.
Yeah, I think one like major point you brought up there was the fact that he's probably playing more often in a deep block than he was before, and he's playing in midfield in that deep block. And I think one of the main criticisms of Maitland-Niles externally was that he was probably a bit too naive to play in that central midfield role, and that's probably, people may not look at it as like a glamorous loan move or as clear as a loan move as Willock's, but when one of the main criticisms of your players, you're too naive, I think going to a side where you have to be switched on defensively at all
times, got a second to switch off,
will help him improve in that sense of the game. One thing that is valid to say is that he probably should be a bit more effective in the attacking side of things. One thing, I know one of our writers at The Athletic, Steve Madley, who's the West Brom reporter, did a whole piece focused on Maitland-Niles' loan move so far.
Big up, Steve. Make sure you check that out, people.
And one thing he noticed was that from midfield, Maitland-Niles loves to dribble. He loves to carry the ball. And when you look at Arsenal's midfield, you could probably see him. He's probably a better fit for that Thomas Partey, I guess, plan. I guess, what would you call it? Substitute Partey or whatever. I don't know.
Plan B number, that plan B number 6 sort of thing.
Yeah, he's probably a better fit for that because he's probably a bit more defensively switched on than Willock. But then it's just about whether he's getting the trust from Arteta to actually play in that role. And I think, I mean, trusting himself enough to go to a club and with a manager in Sam Allardyce, who of course isn't the most glamorous name in the Premier League, but probably knew
for young players either way as well.
Yeah, but he knew that he'd play in central midfield, and he's doing that. So that's just a credit to him, I guess, in terms of he knew what he wanted and he wouldn't back down from that. He could have gone to Southampton or Leicester, but they were going to play him as a wing back. And then I think at, 23 years old now, he wants to let it be known to everyone that he is a midfielder. Even and I think I know people probably think, oh, just you're a footballer, do what you can to get in the team wherever you can play. But if you put yourself into that position, I think anyone, I don't think you would be wrong to want to prove yourself
play where you want to play.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one thing where people from the outside probably get.
Let me press you more on that, though. Let me press you more on that. And you know me, I love to play devil's advocate because, like you said, I see both sides. 100% agree. You know, if you see yourself, whether it works at Arsenal or whatever, if you see yourself as a central midfielder, go out and make it happen and prove to people. But at the same time, and I also feel, you know, versatility, can be a gift and a curse. As you've seen, you know, James Milner throughout his whole career, he's a very good player, but his own versatility has made him play on the flanks, right back, and as opposed to playing more in midfield. It probably extended his career a lot, but it's like, if you're Maitland-Niles, you know, you got your England call up bit off the back of playing as a fullback. Again, I understand you want to be a centre mid and not a right back, but you've got an opportunity to maybe go to the Euros, you know, maybe play for Arsenal. Surely you just take, would you take just I'm a right back now, it is what it is? Because personally, you look at someone like Trent, centre mid, done the right back thing, locked it down. Now there's talk of even moving back. I think if he done that, I think there might have been a case to sit there and say, okay, you're a fullback, you want to play in midfield, let's assess. I wanted him to kind of show us as a fan base, okay, I'm a fullback who's able to play in midfield, or I'm a midfielder who's able to play in fullback. Still, I must admit, I'm like, because even at West Brom, even at times he's been shifted out wide and things. So what would be your thinking if you were in the shoes of Maitland-Niles? What would you be trying to do?
Yeah, so if I was him, and say, let's rewind, how long ago? 6 months maybe, or just at the start of the season, I would probably go with Mikel Arteta, because especially when you look at the way his wing backs were playing at the time, they're always tucking into midfield. So
basically doing that anyways.
Yeah. So you're basically going to be a third central midfielder anyway. So I probably would have just went with Mikel Arteta's thinking.
Facts.
But I'm not Maitland-Niles. Maitland-Niles is his own person. So he wanted to play midfield, and he's doing that. But of course, with some different circumstances at West Brom, in terms of actually like answering the question as well. Like personally, like so I used to play rugby growing up. I kind of just got into it through watching it on the TV, ITV World Cup, and so when they first brought me in, I was playing on the wing, and then there was one game where we got 2 injuries. So one to our outside centre, who's more like a midfielder for people who don't know rugby, and then one for our fullback. So I moved to outside centre, and then I moved to fullback, and then I stayed at fullback for the rest of my time. And I think that's where I think, from a personal point of view, I loved it at fullback because you had a much better view of the pitch, and I think just being open to
learning different stuff in it.
Yeah, learning a new position, just open to taking that. I think, even though it's a completely different sport, it's a different example. I think that's probably where, if I'm going to put it into my head, if I'm making that decision as well, that's probably why I said I would go with what Mikel Arteta said. I think just being open to learning new things. And I think we've seen that with Callum Chambers, where at Fulham, it was actually Scott Parker who pushed him into midfield before even manager. And I remember asking Callum Chambers about that in December, and he said that helped him so much when he moved back to centre-back, but also at right-back, because he knows what the midfielder wants. He knows what the centre-back wants.
He always, Wenger used to always do that sort of stuff.
So I think Callum Chambers is proof, almost in Maitland-Niles' position, that versatility can help massively. And I think, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
That's another one, you know, when Callum Chambers, his versatility's killed him. He arrived here as previously a midfielder, playing at fullback, long-term centre-half, floated around the all of them, and has done quite well in terms of that. But, I don't think there's any answer, because at sometimes you've got to have your opinion and use what life has thrown at you. Like when I look at Maitland-Niles, you've played, one big game you played very well in midfield was Man United away. But typically your best performances have been at fullback, because that's where the opportunities come from. If you look at how many appearances you've made as a footballer at Arsenal, they've all come at fullback. So to a degree, I'd kind of bite the bullet and do what the manager demands of me, like you. And I don't believe there's no smoke without fire. Wenger played you in midfield more, but historically you was a fullback. Emre, you was a fullback. Arteta, you're a fullback. So there's got to be something. I feel what would have probably tipped the balance for Maitland-Niles is probably, I don't feel Arteta fully trusted him if he was in the back four. I don't know why. How you can trust Bellerin and not Maitland? I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but he didn't trust him. And how often was we really going with those wing backs? It looked wavy at Wembley and that, but it wasn't too often. And I just feel Maitland had enough. I feel he had his heart set on probably leaving last summer on loan or whatever. What happened in the Community Shield probably convinced him, and then it's the same old. What do you make of Callum Chambers and the whole right back scenario at Arsenal? Because when I look at it, Chambers, I think he's been hard done by. I think whenever he plays, he does all right. He's not the best player at our football club, but he does all right. I don't mind him staying because he's a competent option. Equally, money talks, but do you think he's the long-term right back? Because I'm of the belief now. I hear Chambers, he's been all right. Maitland-Niles, we can talk about him. Bellerin, Cedric. There's 3-4 names I've said there, and over a 38-game period, I don't know the true level of either right back. So I would want to move for one. So what's your feelings in relation to right back?
I probably wouldn't say Chambers is a long-term right back. I know he played really well there against West Ham, and he also did well against Burnley, where I feel that his inclusion was probably more to counter Burnley's height. Especially because, again, asking Mikel Arteta about it earlier in the season, he said Chambers can be used there if he wants more height. So it was very clear that that was the reason.
Aerial threat in that.
Yeah. So I think in terms of a long-term plan, I don't see him as a right back. But when you look at Arsenal's centre-back issue, I guess we'd call it, you've got a lot of centre-backs there who need their futures decided in the summer. So Chambers is one of those, but also you've got David Luiz, Konstantinos Mavropanos.
Are you giving David Luiz a new deal?
Ooh. I would. It's weird because I don't think he's as bad as most people make out.
Facts. He's actually been better than a lot of people made out. Better signing for Arsenal, I feel, than even me. I thought he's kind of impressed me. Same way I've kind of seen the David Luiz we've seen. You know, I still think he's still that. Do you know what? If it's an extremely, and I mean extremely marginalized role, like he's more or less just, you know, in the training ground, on the bench, you know, he can do up the group stage of the Europa League and stuff. I'm on that. I don't want him to be in the first team next season. I think we need to buy a centre half, but I just feel we need to learn from what we didn't learn with Monreal and Koscielny, in that we're over Santi, and that we're over relying on players and not learning from hindsight and applying foresight. So when these guys are missing, we're losing leaders or we're losing whatever. We're not really planning.
Yeah, I think with you in the fact that I wouldn't if Arsenal were to extend, I wouldn't give him as many first team opportunities as he's had this year, simply because with the amount of centre backs Arsenal have, they do need to kick on into a new phase of what this defense looks like.
What it looks like, yeah.
So I probably, in terms of a decision, I probably would not extend, just because I know how heavily Mikel Arteta relies on him at the moment, and I know that could probably look like a weird decision in terms of how much he trusts Luiz, but you've got to build that trust with other players.
Facts.
And I think he's done that with Rob Holding, although obviously people have different opinions on Rob Holding, whether he's good or not. He's been given a new contract in January. He has the trust of Arteta. And I think with Chambers as well, he's another player who's quite similar to Luiz in that he's a very big, well, not as big, but he's still a big figure in the dressing room in terms that he knits the players together. And so when I was did an interview with Dan Ballard, who's at Blackpool at the minute, I spoke to him very well at Blackpool.
See the penalty the other day, but he's doing all right. He's doing all right.
But so when I was speaking to him a couple months ago, I asked basically because obviously he himself suffered a knee injury last year. And came back to Arsenal to do his rehab. And I asked who was kind of the players that were kind of helping him through that. And he said Callum Chambers was like an inspiration to him during that time.
Big up Chambers for that.
Because not only was Chambers, I guess, doing his own rehab, but he was also just asking questions to Dan Ballard about his own journey, about his recovery, about what he's going through.
Camaraderie sort of thing.
Exactly. And I think that's something you can't really put a price on, because even I remember before lockdown where so Arsenal would do these open training sessions before Europa League games, and so I remember going to the one before the Standard Liège game. So that was where Tyrese John Jules, Zach Medley, Bobby
guy, big up John Jules,
and basically a load of the under 23s guys travelled with Freddie Ljungberg, and Steve Bold's 23s were the first out on the pitch that day, and then the first team came out. Callum Chambers was, I think he was one of the first players out from the first team. And when he came out, he greeted all the 23s players that were already there. And I don't think that's something that all players do. Although like players do that, I don't think all the players go and make themselves known to the younger players. And I think that's something where if you're looking at a person, not just the player, that's where he probably gets a bit more trust from Arteta in the way he conducts himself around others as well. But in terms of his footballing ability, he probably does need to prove himself again at centre back. But I do think that he can do that.
Facts, facts, and more facts. We've got a question here, and I think this is mainly for you with the journalism know-how and stuff. He said, "Big up DG and Art. Did Ainsley Maitland-Niles consistently turn up late to training, or was that slander?" Me personally, I don't know. In it, I mean, Arteta kind of spoke about it. I don't know. Journalist man, is it true or not? Like,
again, I wasn't in the position I am now at the time, so I don't actually know. It's not my information. I never reported on that. I tend to, if I don't know,
I didn't see it.
like if I don't know about a story, I usually tend to just focus on football. That's me. I focus on ball, and
you can't speculate if you don't know. But there's no. I would say again, it's not true, but I'd say there's no smoke without fire, because we did hear, just as fans, Joe Willett, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Aubameyang, they've had issues with lateness. Now, you know, you'd be surprised. People are late to training. People are late to work. It happens. There's fines and things. But I think that's as far as it can go for either one of us, if we could say anything. What's your feelings on Granit Xhaka? Because I do think he's one of these footballers like the Bellerins and stuff. You've struggled to find a balanced opinion on him, innit? Like if you find it, like for me personally, I don't think he's as bad as people make out. I think he's one of those players people are quick to condemn, slow to praise when he deserves it. That being, and I think he's played better than people are giving credit at this season. That being said, is Granit Xhaka has shown us he's one of these players where he'll go through bits of form, but he's good for 5-6 more mistakes. And when you've got several of those players, it's gonna cost you. I also think just him being in the side, I don't think everything's his fault, but I don't think the pros to playing him are outweighed by the cons. And I see why we play him. He tries to be progressive with the ball. We can see it statistically. But I do think Arteta, having been a midfielder, if that's the midfielder you need to want to build you to the next level, we're going to be in trouble, because the best midfielders do things in less touches. The best midfielders don't consistently get caught on the ball. So we're always going to be in a difficult decision. And is he not contracted until 2023? A decision has to be made on his future very soon, because I don't believe it, but if we just look at it, you know, he's probably up there with the Sakas and Tierney's and whatnot. In you're playing week in, week out. The man's always in the lineup. So what's your opinions? Make sure you hit the like button as well, people. But go on.
Yeah. Like and subscribe, everyone. I just get that. But yeah, I think it's no secret that he's a major part of Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. When you look at how Mikel Arteta set up both when using the back three and the back four, Xhaka's there.
Yeah,
he's the quarterback, basically left-footed midfielder who can spray ball anywhere on the pitch.
The best way to describe that, quarterback.
He doesn't move a lot. He stays. He stays in front of the defense and sweeps up when he can. And I think that's the best way to describe him, quarterback. He just stays where he can be most effective. We didn't see that with Unai Emery or Arsene Wenger. I know everyone loves Arsene Wenger. I love Arsene Wenger
exposing them, yeah.
But
he was exposing him, really.
Using Granit Xhaka the way they did, he was doing too much where his lack of agility was being exposed. I think that
especially on the counter.
Exactly. And I think that's one area where I guess Mikel Arteta deserves credit because he's restricted Xhaka's game to what he does best so he doesn't get exposed. So with that being said, I do think there are better options out there.
Tino. Go. Tino's killing me.
But yeah, so I think in terms of where Arsenal are now and where Mikel Arteta is, he's probably the best option that Mikel Arteta has, but there will be better options in the future. And I think when you're looking at where the midfield is going to go, again, speaking from just the personal point of view as a fan, if I was going to target a replacement, and I know you know that I love this guy, Ismail Bennacer.
Yeah, you see, we got to give that one, we got to kiss that one goodbye, but he was perfect, man. He was perfect for this, man.
I think because Arsenal's loan system is a lot better than it was at the time. I think if Arsenal's loan system was as it is now, it probably would have been.
Might not have lost that one, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think that in terms of Xhaka himself, it's just about of course, accepting is probably the wrong word, but once you just understand, I think, understanding is probably the better word. Understanding that's what Arsenal have. That's when you probably get a bit more of a balanced view rather than the extremes of he's totally rubbish and he's the
amazing
best midfielder ever. I mean,
there's fans out there that are genuinely believe Xhaka is the best midfielder in the world, and when you see certain articles come out today, they've given fuel to that fire.
Well, the one thing that I will say about Xhaka is he knows himself as well.
Yeah, I admire his mentality. I'll give him that.
Because when you look at how he conducts himself, he's very honest, very to the point.
I'll give him that.
He knows he knows himself when he's been terrible, and he knows when he's been good. And I think when he came out saying that he's just before the international break, saying that he's probably criticised more than other players, I do think he does have the point there.
That is true. No, he does. Because like I said, he's quick to he's slow to be praised, quick to condemn. He's one of those players. Like, I can't speak for anyone else, but I don't think he's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not really a fan of his or Bellerin's, but I'm the first to praise them if you've done well, the first to critique you if you've done poorly. We all know we don't live in that sort of space anymore, but go on.
Yeah, and one other thing that's kind of a major deal with him is so you may not be able to pick it up over the TV, but when you're at the games, again, it's probably not a tangible thing that you can put with a stat, but he is one of the most consistent talkers on the pitch.
That's very vocal.
And if you've played football or any sport at any level, you know you need talkers on the pitch. And I think that's where he also helps himself a lot, where other players probably lead. For example, he leads vocally. And I think that's where he excels in terms of being able to help certain teammates in different situations. I remember early on in lockdown, so last season, he against Liverpool, when Arsenal beat them at the Emirates, in the first few minutes of the game, he was telling Lacazette, Saka, and Pepe to press Virgil van Dijk and Fabinho. It led to
and look what happened.
Later in the game, he's still telling them to press, and Nelson, not Saka, and Nelson wins the ball, scores, and then again the same for Lacazette's goal. Nelson wins the ball and Lacazette scores, and I think those are things that you can't really see on the TV, but it works up.
I think when it comes to Granit Xhaka should be doing what El Nene does in that's the role for Xhaka. I do think there's a role for him in this squad. I just don't know if you're, an adequate partner for Partey. I do think he gets the best out of Partey right now in the same way El Nene did, but I'm not going to lie. Maybe it was just the second half and was chasing the game, but and I don't think it's going to be long term, but seeing Odegaard partner next to Partey, it did for me. It looked like Partey had a lease of a new life in that when he's with Xhaka, it's not that he doesn't want to score and assist and all these things because you see his shots, but it just feels like he was a bit more confident with Odegaard in that he could show his other things. It's like with Xhaka, it's like he knows he's the guy that's meant to be spraying it and things. I can, if the opportunity is there, I will, but it is what it is. And I think, what was it? Was it against? It was either Leicester or Burnley. I could be wrong. Did Leno not give it to Partey? And Partey played a central role in one of our goals, a really central role. And if that was Xhaka, not that I'm putting them against each other, people would harp on about that. What do you make of Partey? Well, what would you? Because if I had to give Partey a rating out of 10 so far, I'll be generous and give him a 7, but I'd probably say a 6. I think there's a lot more to come. I think he's been very good. I think there's a lot more to come. I think, recently you've been seeing him get 90 minutes and things like that. Where are you at with Partey?
Yeah, I think he's been a very good signing. I don't think, like you said, he's not been amazing in large part. That's because of the injuries he's had and probably the mismanagement in that Tottenham game where Mikel Arteta just pushed him back onto the pitch. But in terms of himself, how he's played football, I think he's been very good. I'd probably go with 7, maybe 6.5. But in terms of
6.5, you don't do half rating. I like that.
I feel that he's proven to everyone who didn't watch him before he came to Arsenal that he's not just a P&P midfielder.
That they thought he was going to be.
And so that's another one that I'm waiting to write, and how he was kind of misinterpreted when Arsenal signed him, how people thought he was just going to be like a new Vieira, when he's totally different player.
Have you seen any deficiencies in his game? He does
Ooh,
like to dwell on it sometimes and probably hold on to it too much.
I think there are sometimes where he probably gets caught in two minds, and just the decision making is a little bit off sometimes, but not very often. I don't think.
It's not often. It's like little 5-10 minute spells, 2-minute spells, but yeah.
But I think what's like really impressed me is just his speed in terms of getting the ball from A to B. So those defense splitting passes are unreal. They're essential and unreal. I think his tech is unmatched in terms of tight spaces. I remember at Southampton away, there was he got the ball on the edge of the box and he did this sort of drag back and push. So I was in the press box and I was like, what happened? I didn't even know. I was like,
he didn't know he had that in his locker.
Not that, but I wasn't expecting it, and I just didn't see where the ball went. I thought he was going to turn that way and he went the other way.
Wow.
But so that was where it's like you kind of get really excited in terms of what he can do on the ball. And I think Odegaard's been the same in that sense. I don't think watching him on the TV does him justice, because when you see him live,
save the Odegaard. We're gonna get into that.
I'll save it. With Partey, I think he's done well in terms of bringing Arsenal a much quicker transition in terms of moving up the pitch, but he can also cover XHAKA quite well. And I think his overall game has been probably, I guess, not what we expected, but what Arsenal have needed in terms of a midfielder. And I guess with the next coming season, when he's probably fit for longer spells of time, that will help him a lot.
Facts. Now, Martin Odegaard, because personally, when I saw him, I'm not, for me anyways, I'm not wowed by technical ability. And I say that I am. Of course, I'm screaming on my YouTube channel from the rooftops when he's doing any little bit of skill. But you're coming mid-season, you're a Real Madrid player, you want to play for Real Madrid, you want to assert yourself. For me, there was no time for niceties. I know you've got technical ability, like Ceballos, show me some consistency. And obviously, a man needs to adapt. He needs to get used to the league, the team, and the rest of it. And he did take a minute for that. But one thing for me was he was just playing in patches. I was over the 90. I was seeing little periods of good stuff. Now, over the last few games, whether it's off the bench again in the Europa League, I'm sure he come off the bench in the Premier League. He's obviously scored against Spurs, played quite well against West Ham. I think he played well against Leicester. I think he's become a real leader for the team. I'm seeing real consistency. And, we spoke about this before, whether it's Aubameyang and the lack of service, whether it's, Pepe with a right back. I think all of these factors are true, but at some moment you need to look at the player and why it's not happening. And sometimes it's like they weren't finding him in areas and it's like he's accepting it. Now he's either demanding it or going in search for it. So where you at with Odegaard? What have you seen from Odegaard and things like that?
I'll give you my mum's verdict first.
Big up Mumsy.
He's probably her favorite player at the minute. She really does like him. And we're both born in 98. So I do have a bit of an affinity for Martin Odegaard. But in terms of football, I do think that he is, like you said, one of the big leaders. I think for someone so young, he takes charge very quickly. And I think that's not just in terms of being vocal, because I think we've seen that he's very vocal, but his actions speak so loudly as well. I think the way he moves about the pitch, his presence almost demands.
The way he tells people to press as well, like he's one shot in the press half the time. Yeah,
and I think that's another big point with him. He's not only does he tell people to press, but he presses himself and he presses intelligently. He knows where to direct the traffic.
Presses intelligently. Sorry, bro, but that's something that I believe English football fans don't understand. Premier League fans don't understand. When we see, when we sometimes used to just see Alexis Sanchez just pressing one man up, there's 5 people there. I commend it. It works, but our European counterparts, they're saying that's a waste of energy. So I'm like, he knows when to press. That's something even with Joe Willock, you could see yourself tiring yourself out. Go on, bro.
Yeah, but so the main thing in terms of pressing that I've seen, and probably you've seen, and all Arsenal fans have seen, is that it goes to a 4-4-2. He joins Lacazette, and then he directs the traffic to the corner flag. And that's where, against Tottenham, he pushes Eric Dyer to the corner flag. Dyer loses it and passes to Reguilon. He then nicks the ball for Reguilon, and it leads to Emil Smith-Rowe hitting the crossbar. If that shot went in, I would have exploded everywhere. I don't know what I would have done. It would have been trouble.
Yeah, when he hit that crossbar, I was thinking, Smith-Rowe, agenda time. My youngsters arrived. What do you make of that, though? Like, because, you know, I do think Arsenal fans, from the minute Odegaard arrived to this club, he spoke about how he's comfortable in this, that, and we already romanticized ourselves with the idea of him staying permanently. Like, as you and I and everybody listening right now could have made out, obviously, when you've got no option to buy him, it's irrelevant. Right now, you're hearing Bayern Munich, allegedly, and Manchester City are interested in him. So, you know, Real Madrid clearly will sell to the highest bidder. They've been linked with Pogba, Camavinga, Haaland, and Mbappe. To get these players, you need to make some money, no matter who you are. Do you think it's still early? Because on one hand, I think it's early for the hype train, because I think he's been not written off, but kind of been already. He's kind of, everybody's sung his praises. Do you think it's? I think it is, but is it? Like, for me, I'd like to keep him, but is it? Do you think it's too early?
I think it's too early for people on the outside, but for Mikel Arteta and Edu, for instance, they probably have to be. Well, they probably already are putting in work to try and convince him to stay. And I think so James McNicholas, Gunner Blog on Twitter, who also writes for The Athletic.
Hey, someone else I want to do this with, man. Tell him to shout me, man. I want him to jump on this. He's a good guy at his stuff, man.
So he's written that basically Odegaard's camp are going to decide at the end of the season, and Odegaard backed that up when he was speaking in his press conference for Norway. Obviously, he's Norway captain now, so he had his interviews, and he said that he's going to decide at the end of the season. And I think that's something that's going to kind of remain the case. But in terms of what Arsenal can do, they're probably doing everything they can do at the minute in terms of giving him the platform to succeed, similar to what he had at Real Sociedad. But here, I think, obviously, Arsenal are a much bigger club than Sociedad, and there is probably that bigger draw to maybe convincing a player to stay for that bit longer. We saw it with Dani Ceballos last season, where he was raving about Mikel Arteta, even though Arsenal finished 8th. He was still
and at times he was hardly really playing. He went through patches.
Yeah, and I think we saw how Mikel Arteta could get the best out of Dani Ceballos on the pitch and then convince him to stay. So that probably will be a bit of an encouragement to maybe replicating that with Odegaard this summer. But I think that, in terms of those on the outside, it's probably a bit early to start thinking about that. I'd say just enjoy the moment while it's here.
Facts, because again, we don't know what's going to happen. I'd say, and again, I want to get your opinions on this. Now, for me, it's all good and well talking about Odegaard. I hope to God we can get him permanently or another loan, but I always believe in plan Bs, plan Cs, fallout plans. And it just feels, when it's Arsenal and we're linked with a player and it's like there's concrete interest and stuff, I think us as fans, people involved in the club and management, it's like that's the only player. Now, that's fine if that's Lionel Messi and you're able to get that. I somewhat admire that. If I can't get this target, I'm not getting none. But we're Arsenal Football Club, and we're Arsenal Football Club of today. We have to be able to deal with things. It just feels like it was Partey or bust. Thank God he had that release clause that we had to take to the last day of the season. Clearly trying to play chicken. You know, it was all our or bust, and you've seen what's happened. Do you feel we're getting in that territory again where it's Odegaard or bust? Because as much as he says he's comfortable here, he's cool here, and we're cool for him, the goal coming here was to play for Real Madrid. We're all thinking, after these games, he's comfortable here, but he might be sitting there and thinking, I wonder if Real Madrid's coaching staff saw this. That's his goal. So what happens if he turns around and says, I hear that, but remember, fundamentally, this was just an arrangement of convenience. You lot needed creativity, especially getting rid of Mesut Ozil. I needed a platform. I'm here to help you, and then go back to Madrid.
Yeah, I think in terms of, when you're looking at the situation as a whole, you got to remember as well, it's not just Odegaard, it's in terms of losing creativity, people may not feel Danny Ceballos is the most. People may not. Oh my god, my voice. Sorry.
Hey, don't worry, bro. Don't worry, man. Listen, it is what it is. It happens, man.
People may not feel like Danny Ceballos is the most creative player, but Arsenal are losing 2 midfielders at the end of the day, whether they like it or not. And then the void that Aaron Ramsey left in 2019 opens up.
We might be able to get him back. I'm guessing.
Those wages.
Damn wages, boy, you know.
But yeah, I think that's one thing to remember. The void isn't just going to be Martin Odegaard. It's going to be Martin Odegaard and Danny Ceballos. And when you're looking at a plan, also how effective Arsenal are going to be in the market is going to come down to what they do in the Europa League. Because when you look at the league table, are they going to qualify for the Europa League through the league table? It looks unlikely at the minute. Even more unlikely to say the Champions League.
Yeah. I was happy for you to just miss that one out.
And I think this season is just almost like a replay of last season, but with bigger stakes.
Yeah, because there's no FA Cup now.
Exactly. What would have happened if Arsenal didn't win the FA Cup?
Above Thomas Partey is not an Arsenal footballer. It's as simple as that. Maybe there's no money to even get Odegaard. I'm not Odegaard. Ceballos on another loan. Maybe Gabriel doesn't arrive to this club. We'll never know.
Exactly. And I think that's the situation Arsenal find themselves in now. They have to literally play for their lives in the Europa League. They can't slip up at any point in any tie. And I think one thing that may help them is the fact that, okay, this might sound a bit weird because you'd usually like it the other way around. But with the home leg being the first leg, I think that would probably lead to them having to play for something when they go into the second leg. And
after that team, we can't lose to them. That's one. After what the Glenn Kamara incidents, we can't lose to them.
That's another thing in itself as well. And I think just having the incentive of an away goal in the second leg hopefully would mean there isn't a repeat of the second leg against Olympiacos where Arsenal just looked flat. They looked like they were there to defend the lead, and that was it.
That's why I'm scared, man, because you look at, like I said earlier, man, you look at Olympiacos this year, last year, those 4 games, you look at the Benfica games sandwiched in between them. Arteta can tell me we've learned our lessons as much as he wants, but the players have to arrest it themselves, and I'm not seeing them do that.
Yeah, that's the main thing. And I think what comes into that as well is squad management. I know we talk about that a lot.
Facts. Another thing people don't understand.
Just understanding the squad is something I think Mikel Arteta is still trying to figure out with Martinelli, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson. Now is probably the time where Eddie's got rhythm. Martinelli's got some sort of rhythm where he's come off the bench a few times. Nelson's been impressed in training from what it looks like in
chopping up Bellerin. I mean, to be fair, it's got to the point we can't even praise people for chopping up Bellerin. It seems easy at this moment, but
yeah, with the amount of quality that there is in the squad, there should be room to rotate, I feel. And that's where Arteta maybe faltered last year with the Olympiacos games coming between, I believe it was Everton and Newcastle. And there was hardly any rotation. Aubameyang playing every game. Yes, he won the game against Everton, but then he's knackered.
But then, he's knackered, and we're surprised he's not quite at it, and there's a drop-off in his quality for that game.
So that's where I feel, in terms of just managing the squad, there needs to be a lot of focus on that in the coming weeks, because it is a crucial time for Arsenal.
Final question is actually the title in typical DG fashion. We're talking about the very point last. Mikel Arteta, man, I know we've indirectly touched on it. You've touched on the 4-3-3 and all of these things. What's your thoughts on Mikel Arteta as the gaffer, where we're at now? Also, where we've been as a season, because we've come a long way from him talking about crossing it 30-odd times, Willian playing as our striker. It seems like he's gone back to basics sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the main thing I'd say is that I don't think he's as bad as some people make out on Twitter, and I don't think he's as good as some people make out on Twitter. I think Twitter, although I'm on it a lot, you just miss a lot of the blurred lines. You you make it too black and white. And I think
And it's not
with Arteta, I think he is a good manager. I do feel that maybe with how, especially the summer went, where you look at how quickly things changed at Arsenal with Raul Sanllehi leaving, with all the redundancies being made, the 55 redundancies made almost days after the FA Cup win, his title changing from head coach to manager, so he's more involved in big picture stuff rather than just on pitch stuff. I think that had a massive impact that isn't really talked about. I don't think that I think the amount of time he had on the pitch probably went down a lot, and that's where we saw probably things became stale with the 3-4-3, for instance. But in moving back to the 4-2-3-1, I do think it maybe came a bit too late. I do think that Emile Smith-Rowe should have been included a lot earlier. In terms of at the time, he was the only real number 10 available.
There was real reluctance to use him.
And it was just strange that he wasn't brought in sooner. But since then, I do feel that there has been direction again. And I don't feel that Arsenal are in a bad spot. I know that's probably weird to say with the position they are in the league table, but when you look at how Manchester United did after Sir Alex Ferguson, one thing Arsenal want to avoid is that turnover of manager. And I think in Arteta, they do have a man that has a plan, and it's just about seeing through and getting to that real plan. With the 4-2-3-1, I do think is probably the most effective way for Arsenal to play at the moment, but you can't ignore that desire he had to go to the 4-3-3 as soon as Arsenal returned from the first lockdown. And with that, I do think there's probably going to be some more changes. And again, I know we talked about it just a couple of minutes ago, but one big improvement I'd say is squad management and how he deals with that squad.
Yeah, man. I think, do you know what it is? You said it great there. I think you said you have no choice but to be on the fence. Now, if somebody believes Arteta is the man, I'm not criticizing that. And likewise, if they believe he's not the man, as long as you're open to being proved wrong, what can anybody tell you? I just feel it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, where when you praise him with one hand, very things like squad management. There's examples of great squad management, examples of dodgy squad management. Sometimes the tactics has been spot on. Other times I've looked at it a bit clueless. I do have to account he's a manager. He's still learning. It's not a free hit, but he is learning. And for me, the biggest thing was, like you kind of said, I'm focusing on the field, but you made a point about off the field where his head coaching title has changed. We need a collective bunch. Like you said, if he's going to be on the coaching, if he's going to be less on the coaching ground, then he needs coaches that can, make sure the players first and foremost remain switched on and the coaching standard could still be there. If he can't always be there in terms of, contract negotiations and looking for new signings, we need a proper collaborative thing. Right now, it doesn't seem like it's that. It does seem like there's a lot of inexperienced apprenticeship chefs, and we're acting a bit surprised when the curry goal isn't quite to the standard we think it should be, sort of thing, really. But it's like you said, man, you said it there. I think there's something to believe in him. My one gripe with Arteta, I would say, sometimes he makes the one thing for me is sometimes he makes decisions that I don't feel it reflects a man under pressure, like with some of the lineups and things. And when it goes right, it goes right. When it goes wrong, it goes wrong. Like, ironically, a lot of people would have said that with Chambers against West Ham. He played quite well, so it's not a thing. Sometimes if he's doing a bit of what I feel Arsene Wenger did towards the end of his career, in that I don't necessarily know if the decisions you're making are the best for the club or just literally the best for what you're trying to do. It's a bit of a playing favourite sort of thing. And I think he's quite hard to... I like that he doesn't necessarily believe in anyone in the squad beyond the obvious, because he does, sometimes XHAKA might play and he'll switch it up in a big game and hold in and all of these things. But I do think with that, there needs to be some stability, and I do think he plays a bit of favourites. I do think there's loyalty to players that several managers have been loyal to, and it hasn't happened. And I'm keen to see what happens with Bellerin, with XHAKA, with David Luiz, 3 players who are allegedly key and have had many examples of how they're leaders off the field, but one consistency in that, we've heard XHAKA's been disruptive at times and he wants to leave. We've heard Bellerin wants to keep it moving. We've heard quite a few of these rumours. So like you said, everything can't happen in one window, but you'd imagine something needs to get done. I know I said I'm going to ask you one more question, but and I've answered that, but one more question for real. It's Arsenal versus Liverpool. What's your feelings in that game, man? What's your feelings going into that? Because we're back now. You know, international break done, really.
Yeah, I'd say optimistic. I don't think Arsenal should fear Liverpool, especially with how the game at the Emirates went last season. Of course, you could say, oh, Liverpool are having a terrible season, so maybe that's the reason. But don't forget, Arsenal beat them before they became champions twice.
Twice, yeah.
And when you look at, again, what you talk about tactical brain of Mikel Arteta, those are two games where he probably got his tactics right. I remember in the Premier League game, that was the first time I remember Nicola Pepe being played off the left. Obviously, he's been used there more frequently this season. But again, it's just where the pressing worked. And I think that's where his probably the game management came in for a better example of that. And I think that now with the attacking options that Arsenal have, the probably the biggest problem is how to fit them all on the pitch.
Yeah. Good problems for once, man.
And that's the problem you want. That's the problem Mikel Arteta would want. But again, it's just about picking the right players for the game. And I think in terms of how to approach that, I think he's got this week to decide, and hopefully the right approach is made as well, keeping an eye on the Europa League. But I do think that Arsenal and Mikel Arteta shouldn't be fearful going into the game. They should attack it.
Would you say we've probably never had, and again, like you said, we've beaten them before, but would you say we've never had a better chance to play them and potentially beat them? We've got it all to do. We didn't help ourselves against West Ham, but as you keep saying, and I keep saying, we shouldn't be fearful. We shouldn't be complacent either, but we shouldn't be fearful because it's not the same Liverpool now. In true Arsenal standards, you might see the Liverpool of old, you know, even the Liverpool that won the Champions League, let alone the Prem, but you know. Would you say we've never had a better chance? And we have put on some big wins on the board collectively this season. Leicester, Spurs, United away. We've done a couple bits of business. Chelsea as well. They're not a big club, but neither is Spurs, to be fair. I had to do it, Spurs and Chelsea fans.
Yeah, I think there's probably better points to play there. I think that in terms of Arsenal's schedule, it's a sticky time, but I guess it's one you'd want to get out of the way quickly. So, yeah, I'd probably say, it probably is the best time. And I think one thing with that as well is because we don't know at the minute, but if Mikel Arteta is hoping to rotate a little bit, I think he's going to have hungry players, and you want hungry players to play against that Liverpool side.
Who's the players? Who's like, because again, I've said it, you've said it, and just for the viewers, because to give them better content, when we say, oh, there's a couple players that are hungry, rotation, just so the fans kind of have a view, who are the sort of players that is in your thinking? Because you said one for me, and I'm sure you agree, Pepe's one, you know, chomping at the bit. I would say, I think man have forgotten how good Gabriel is personally, and he's the best centre half at this club. When it comes to that rotation sort of business, who do you feel's been hard done by?
So in terms of like hunger, I'd say the players I was thinking about specifically were Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, Gabriel Martinelli. Obviously, I understand what you're saying with Nicola Pepe, but I wouldn't properly cast him in that bracket because he is playing and he is having an impact. The one way I'd say he probably has been a bit hard done by is that he's not starting games. But
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. But he's still having an impact, and I think that's just as important. So those three were probably the main ones that I was thinking of. In terms of others, I wouldn't really say. I'm not sure. Trying to think.
Would you say Chambers deserves to keep his place in that team? Cedric?
I'd probably go with Cedric. I think he's, in terms of a natural right back, Arsenal's best option. What he offers going forward, and as a defender, I think is superior to what Bellerin offers at this present moment, because he is more effective in the final third.
Facts.
And is able to keep hold of the ball and push it forward at better times. So I'd probably go with him, as keeping in mind that the Liverpool have Sadio Mane.
That's probably why Cedric's got to play.
I probably wouldn't go for Chambers at right back because of that.
Remember what happened when he used to play for Southampton, and we used to play against Mane. Jesus, him and Jefferson Montero. What my word for Swansea.
So yeah, I think Nelson and Nketiah and Martinelli were the main three I was talking about, but there are obviously other players that could feel like they have something to say in that game and in Premier League games going forward if Arsenal do stay in the Europa League.
Where you at with Marie as well? Because I haven't asked you. It's like Marie, where you at with Marie? I think he's a good option. I think when called upon, he's decent. I think fans overhype him a bit. Not to say he's not good, but I think, you know, when you've had such a small sample size and he has showed concerning bits and pieces, I think we need to steady the ship. I do think he is of my thinking long term with Gabriel, with him, with Saliba, hopefully next season.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a long-term player. When you look at it, he's Mikel Arteta's first signing ever as a manager. and
history.
Exactly. And I think the big thing with him is he's left-footed. I know people probably get tired about that now, but it's a major factor with how Mikel Arteta wants to play. And one thing I'd just say is not every signing has to be a starting player. Like
competent options.
He's a good player. He is sound, I think. And when you see how he plays when he comes in, for the most part, he does impress. But when you see how Gabriel performs, he's just, I'd say, a couple levels above him in terms of, yes, he has a higher ceiling, but right now I'd probably say he performs at a better level as well. So with Mari, I'd probably say, yes, long term starter maybe, but probably more often be a player for the Europa League or just rotation. And I think that wouldn't go amiss. I think he's a good player. I do think he has quality, but Gabriel is just a better option.
What do you make of? Because again, you've said I didn't want to cut you off, so I let you finish. Gabriel and Marie. They never playing together. Obviously, a lot of people talk about, they're two left-footers, and I hear it. It makes sense. When you have left-footed players, they all tend to be extremely left-footed. They don't try to use that right foot at all. But at the same time, Holding's played on the left-hand side there. David Luiz has played on the left-hand side there. So would you ever partner them together? You know, the common language is Portuguese. I know one is Spanish. You know, they got the experience on each other. You know, that kind of eliminates David Luiz per se.
It's hot. Oh, I've never thought about it because they are both left-footed. I don't know if that's wrong of me to have that kind of mental block.
I do the same thing, and I'm like, it don't really make sense. It's like when you have two central midfielders. When they do left-footed ones, we're not gonna sit there and say that. So why do we do it for the right-footers? I know people say the angles they might receive the ball on, but it's just because it's foreign or it's not natural doesn't mean it's not something we should do. You know, Peter is there for the left hand for the left-footers, and out there you can't stand it.
Ask Peter for some insight. What does he think?
Yeah, Peter, give us some insight in relation to where it is with those centre halves, man. Like, I think it could be a thing. I personally think the way we're at this season, and like you said earlier, there's a lot to play for. I don't think we're going to see that. I think you're more likely to see Gabriel and Holding and Marie, David Luiz, and whatever partnerships. I don't think you're going to see too much of that. So time will tell. But I'm happy for Marie. You know, for me, Marie gives me confidence, he gives me competence, and he gives me consistency. That's all I can ask for. When you're thrown in, that's all I want to see from you. You know, can you be competent? If you're a defender, can you actually defend? Can you do it consistently? And are you confident? Because I think people underestimate confidence. Like I said, XHAKA probably shouldn't be in our lineup, but he believes in himself. Saka believes in himself. ODEGAARD leads by example. Of course, there's moments where you stop believing in yourself, but especially when you play for such a volatile club and a volatile fan base as much as ours, I think you need confidence, because these fans, they're going to make you feel like the best thing since sliced bread, or they're going to make you feel like you haven't got anything. And we've seen that with several players all of the time.
definitely. I think, yeah, confidence is major. Like, I don't, especially at Arsenal, I don't think it's spoken about enough. We've seen that with. Oh, I was just reading that. Sorry, bit of interaction. I thought it was Peter coming back, but yeah, I think confidence is massive. Like you touched on with XHAKA, I think Pepe is the best example, or even Lacazette. Lacazette is a major example as well.
We don't try.
So I think when looking at that, as well as just the centre back, Peter's got back.
Hey, big up Peter, man. Big up Peter. He said, I honestly don't understand why it's a convo. You don't hear anything about two right footers. Where's the equality, fam? Left. As someone who's left-handed, I can sympathize with you. We're gonna start a campaign just
left feet matter.
You know, Xhaka's gonna be the fanboy of that and the poster boy and whatnot. If I will see how you like that. Oh man. And for a lot of you saying, oh, when am I gonna get him on? I'll get him on, but there's got to be something to speak on. You know, really, we gotta let Arsenal develop some things and he'll be back here. Let me let you get out of it though, because I know you're trying to bust out. But last thing, score prediction for the Liverpool game. You got to give us a score prediction, bro.
No clean sheet.
That's the man's first comment. No clean sheet, not even a number, just no clean sheet. I hear it.
I like Leno though. I do like Leno. I think he gets too much stick. But
sorry, we got to speak on that loud. I'm speaking for myself now, bro. Yeah, I think Leno is a good keeper, fantastic shot stopper, better than what we've had. I think a better defense you can move with him. I think there's 100 more problems to solve at this club way before you talk about Bird Leno. But saying that, I must admit, I'm not necessarily convinced. I think sometimes it's a spectacular save. I think sometimes he punches it into areas unnecessarily. I think sometimes he's a bit too eccentric. I think his distribution at times is very inconsistent. You know, he's one of them players typically that I can rely on. You know, I've got a lot of time for him, but I must admit, if the club was ran the way we potentially want it to and in the image we want it to, that's where I'm probably looking at. Because at 29 years of age, you're still young for a goalie, but some of these sort of things I wouldn't expect to see. So where are you at with Leno and potentially these mistakes?
Yeah, I think in terms of the whole picture, understanding where Arsenal are, I'm completely on board with him. I think that he's a quality goalkeeper, like you said, shot stopper. And where I feel the probably mistakes creep in is when he has time to think.
Yeah, you hit it. Yeah, like shouldn't that be dangerous though? When you got time to think as a goalie, you start doing a matter.
Because I think I was so obviously the Athletic, we do a podcast as well called Handbrake Off, and so with Amy Lawrence, James McNicholas, and Ian Stone, one of them mentioned about David Seaman. How he was kind of the opposite side of the extreme, where he performed extremely well when he had time to think, because obviously he's in a different situation where he's at a top club who don't concede many shots, so he has to be switched on. He has to be switched on all the time, whereas Leno probably performs better where he has a bit less time to think and he's a bit more busy. I think it was James that brought up the point. And I think that's probably the main thing where, as well, it's probably you see it more with the distribution side of things. That's where, again, Olympiacos last season, their corner.
No one talks about it.
Their corner that led to the goal came from him not knowing what to do with the ball.
Just like Wolves, where the red card for David Luiz, that started it off.
Yeah, so that's probably the main issue. But as for where Arsenal are at the moment, I believe in him as the number one goalkeeper.
Same.
And I think for all the, I guess, mistakes, there's probably like
numerous times he saved us. Don't get twisted. Like there's been many times, mainly last season, where we were losing 3 or so nil, and I'm still saying, yo, Leno's the man of the match there. You know, we could have lost 7. Leno's done something. And one thing I've said, and I'll say it again, I have a problem for Leno in the sense of if I was a goalie, I'd be absolutely peed off with Arsenal because, you know, you haven't given that man a decent defense to be a part of. You know, we're still kind of messing about with who is the top centre halves. Yeah, we've got Tierney. Me and you have spoken about Bellerin. You know, we've spoken about 3 to 4 men at that spot, and nobody right now is that number one. So I feel Leno's been hard done by. I do think if you fix up the midfield, you fix up the defensive unit that he's a part of, then we'd be better. You can get away with him. Dare I say, if Leno makes a mistake, them times it will be down to Leno. Sometimes I feel he's made mistakes because he don't trust his teammates and he's reacting. The only things I really get at Leno is sometimes I don't feel he does the basics well enough, and his distribution puts people under pressure. I'm not a fan of how people mention Martinez all the time because, again, Martinez was a good goalie, but nobody against Spurs even. Nobody speaks about when Martinez does dodgy moments. It's only when it's Aston Villa's the first game on Match of the Day. Oh, why did we sell him? And we've got Leno sort of thing. It's a bit mad.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is probably that I feel is quite big is just understanding when to play. So like I've asked
thank you, Mr. Journalist. You articulated what I wanted to say perfectly. That is it. That is it.
Because I did ask Arteta about him in January because around that time
he's getting heat in it.
Well, no, he was playing longer a lot more often. So I asked Arteta about it, and he said it's about understanding like when to play, and even against Burnley, like you mentioned earlier, him playing out leads to the goal.
And in the Europa League last couple of games as well, it's mainly Ceballos.
Yeah. But so him playing out leads to the goal, but also when he does go long, there are times where it can lead to a counter attack.
Because there's no one there. Like, we don't understand this thing. That's because I play Sunday League in it. That is something that I know is annoying. When you're playing in a defense and you're just about holding on as it is, and it's just being kicked long and coming back, you're gonna get tired. Mistakes are gonna creep in even more.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the probably one thing that's not his fault for maybe it is a little bit, but just having that understanding of when to go short and when to go long. I think that's probably where the improvements can be made as well. But overall, I think, yeah, like you said, that there's very little to complain about in the grand scheme of things with him.
Do you think, because you said something there, and this is my last question for Truth before I let you go. I keep saying that you said something there a lot along the lines of you know, when you're playing out from the back, when to do it, when not to do it. Now, personally, I believe when you're playing out from the back, you know, if playing out from the back historically 3 or 4 times a season, a mistake happens, I believe that's a byproduct, innit? Man are human, these things happen. But when I'm seeing it kind of week in, week out, like arguably, listen, whether I talk about it's Ceballos, XHAKA, Leno, whatever, as you know, when we make mistakes, it might be one person's fault fundamentally, but then it becomes a sequence where people could have reacted. How much do you personally, when we make these mistakes and we talk about them, how much do you attribute to the player? Like, again, I don't remember if it was Burnley or Leicester or both, but there was definitely one where it was more Leno's fault. He's kind of put XHAKA under problems, and then XHAKA's been silly in a sense. So when these things happen, how much do you say, yo, this is just a player or it's the manager?
Oh, good question.
That's why I'm here, man. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, people. Don't think I haven't seen that over 100 of you have not hit this like button. Go and hit that, and make sure you're following my guy on all his socials as well as The Athletic. Subscribe to that. So I think they got a special offer for a pan, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I think I'd say more of the responsibility. I won't use blame because I don't really like.
Yeah, let's say responsibility.
I'd say more of the responsibility is on the player, because when you know, once you're a manager, you can't control what happens on the pitch.
Once you step over that field, yeah.
Your job is to basically bring the team to a certain point, and then they have to execute it. And I think
100%.
When it's the players that are making mistakes, that's where the responsibility lies rather than with the manager. And I think, of course, there are times where it's worked and times where it hasn't. When it hasn't worked, I think one of the main reasons is probably because, like, especially with the volume, it's happened that with Arsenal. Speaking from my experience with just playing sport, once you make one mistake, it's very hard to get that mistake out of your head.
Yeah.
Quickly. So you're almost like in a sense of panic where you're like, okay, I really need to get this right next time, and then you force it a little bit. Like I've done it like before, say in rugby where playing fullback again, for instance, you're literally the last line of defense.
Oh, wow.
So say someone kicks the ball long, you have to catch that ball.
You're sounding like Mustafi in rugby right now, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. You're sounding a bit mad.
No,
like.
I'm just saying, but like you have to catch that ball. So if you don't catch it, even if you say, like everyone knows, if you knock it forward, it's a scrum. But even if you knock it backwards, that you lose valuable seconds. So having that confidence as well. Again, confidence is so big with this. To not be able to panic in those situations is massive, because I like speaking from a personal point of view, when you're in those situations and you are confident, it's totally different. It's like you can do it in your sleep. Like you can catch a ball that's coming over your head backwards, fine, if you're confident. But if you're panicking, you may just miss a certain
overthink it too much.
Yeah, you might miss a certain part of your technique or whatever. You might not, say in football, if you need to make a pass, you might not scan before you make the pass, like Tom Davis for England against Portugal.
Wait, less about England's under 21.
Yeah, less of that. But I think just those moments as well, it does come down to the player, but there are moments, split-second decisions that I don't think that most people, like, I guess, taking into consideration. So it is the player's responsibility. But again, once the first mistake is made, it becomes easier to make a second one. So yeah, that's why I just wanted to say that in terms of, yes, it is 100%. Player's responsibility, but there are other
100%.
factors.
That was facts, 100%, because sometimes you can see a player who said, you know what, mistakes happen. It is what it is. I'm gonna, they're gonna get onto me on match of the day or whatever. I have to keep going. Equally, you see what you've just said, in that people keep thinking about it. And I'm of the belief, because it used to happen to me, when I just forgave myself, it is what it is, I'd play much better. When I'm thinking about it, I might play an under hit pass because I'm thinking about things too much. I might overpass it. I might not be in position, and because you don't want to make a next mistake, you're now starting a catalogue of just repeated error upon error upon error. It's like Aubameyang. What game was it? He raced through on goal. He's tried to chip it with his left, and it was terrible. But I've seen him score that in his sleep. Last question for real. I'm going to lock it off after this. Quickly, what goal record do you think? What goal return in the Premier League do you think Aubameyang's ending up with? Because what has he got, like 9 or so? I'm thinking of 15, hopefully 16.
I was saying hopefully a 15. I think after Liverpool, Arsenal's running isn't that bad.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say that.
A couple goals there.
I shouldn't say it's not that bad, because we all know what happens.
Yeah. We might come back to this and say you're the one who kicked it off, bro.
I'll go with 15. I'll go with you and say 15. Yeah.
That's blessed, man. Let them know where they can find you as well.
So my name is Art De Roche. It's just spelled out like, I guess you can see it on my name tag here on the screen. It's just spell that out on Twitter, and you can find me.
Don Juan and Peter are killing me, but go on, bro.
Yeah, so Art De Roche on Twitter, that's where I am mostly. I don't take myself too seriously, as you've probably seen.
You put some fun. You are on the meme stuff. You kill me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where you can find me. And obviously Deluded's on there. You all know where he is.
Look, you can see his stuff right here, man. Oh well, that's an article, but this is him. Look at him, Mr. Superstar. Look, you see anyone chat to Arteta like that? Superstar, you. Like, I'm dropping this, as you lot can see, because I know a lot of you are lazy. The link is there, the link is there for his stuff. Go and hit him up. He's on 16. There's been about 200 odd of you in here, so it should say 16.4. I barely passed math, but I think that's right. Like,
I only got C in maths.
Yeah, bro. So did I, bro. I would have thought you got higher than a C, to be fair.
Nah, maths wasn't my strong suit. I was more English, but even like when it came to exams, not that I didn't take them seriously, but yeah,
You did, man.
I was average, I'd say.
Did you always know it was a journalist thing? Is that because I always find like people when they kind of know or don't know indirectly what they want to do, they say things like that. They say, maths was just about enough to go through, but English was my thing, PE was my thing, art was my thing. Did you always know it was a journalist thing for you? It was always like, this is all really I'm on.
Yeah, I think so. Growing up, it was quite indirect, but I did know it. So like, because I think I've spoken before.
Yeah,
about
you told me about. Yeah, you used to. Your family members used to make you do English lessons.
Yeah,
and that.
my grandma. Yeah.
Shout out, Granny.
So I was always kind of writing about sport, even like just about like other random stories I'd make up in my head. So I was always writing, and then when it came time to decide, I was just like, I like football, so I'll write about that. And luckily, I was young enough to realize it at the time, and I guess find out the right paths to go and pursue it. So if anyone's watching that wants to get into like sports journalism stuff, I did go to uni, but I wouldn't say that's the be all and end all. The main thing is getting experience because, again, I was an average student at uni.
Oh, tell them about the work he used to do, because this guy used to, like me, he was at the 23s doing the women's stuff, working for free, doing little articles and things, having his own website, doing the kick it out and the raise your game circuit, all of those. Like, he didn't get there overnight, so it can be done.
Yeah, so like in terms of uni, I got a 2-1 on my sports journalism degree. There were people in the course that got firsts and stuff. I was not one of them, but
hey man, look where you're at now. You did just okay, bro.
Yeah, but one thing I realized quite early on was the work is what's going to matter. So, so I was quite lucky to notice that early on and kind of get in touch with local clubs, rugby and football.
As well as hard.
And then that's where I guess I built my experience in terms of match reporting, interviewing and stuff like that. So yeah, if there's anyone watching that wants to get into kind of this type of career, just make use of what's around you and who's around you as well. And hopefully that'll kind of start the chain reaction, because sometimes it's just coincidence how some things fall into place. Like, say James Bench, for instance, I met him.
Cool guy, man. Came on my channel as well.
I met him at a 23s game, and then like a year later, he's doing my interview at football.london.
Hey, were you saying that was a formality sort of thing there?
Yeah. I didn't know he was going to be there. Like, so, like even in the interview, I said, so when I was leaving, I said, "Nice to meet you," as if I'd never met him. I was like,
"You got to check, to be fair."
So so that's it. Yeah, if anyone listening or watching wants to get into that kind of career path, that's it. And I am on the Instagram, but I don't really use it that much. So Twitter is probably the better place to follow.
Yeah, he's not one full of that. But yeah, if you type his name on social, just follow them up, man. But I love for coming through as well at 11 in the morning as well. I've kept you a very long time, so let me let you get out of here. People, please make sure you're hitting the like button and all of those things. You're subscribing. Please make sure you're checking out my guy's Instagram, Twitter page. You can follow him on Instagram if you want, like the Jim Gooner TV, but he's telling you Twitter is his base. And like I said, when it comes to Arsenal news, courtesy of The Athletic and off his own back, it's your go-to guy, man. This is half the articles I come to you guys with. It's because he's spoken about them half the time. But love for coming through, my guy. We're all going to get out of it now. People, bless up, man.